Race relations are at a very strained place in our country, probably the most strained they've been since the 1960s.
How do we talk about race and diversity in this polarized climate?
This is our attempt.
We spoke with students and lifelong Hazelwood residents.
We talked to local businesses and clergy.
We spoke with victims of the justice system, and we spoke with people who are part of the justice system.
We even sat down and talked amongst ourselves.
We had one simple question that we started with. Are race relations worse or better, and why do you think that way?
Through the following conversations, it is our hope that you will begin to have similar conversations with the people you encounter in your daily life.
And maybe our different experiences can enrich our shared experiences.
All right, we're here today with Mr. Michael Struthers. Michael is a lifetime resident here of Hazelwood, and we are continuing our conversations, which are entitled Diversity Dialogue. And I think we should probably add Hazelwood Diversity Dialogue because we are talking with people who've grown up and lived in this community and watched it from the time they were very young. And Michael has agreed to come and talk to us a little bit about his story, what it was like growing up in Hazelwood during his time. And I think that would have probably been like the early 80s going on into the 90s.
Yes, I was actually born in '72, so I do remember some '70s.
Yeah.
But like I guess my time when I was out and about in the neighborhood, I guess it would be like through the '80s, '90s.
And the 80s was absolutely a very key time in this community because there was so much going on. There was a lot of things that were happening with respect to our young people. Mm-hmm. And we know there were a lot of things that had been brought into our community that caused a lot of other things to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so it would be interesting for us to hear more about sort of your life as you kind of coming out of the 70s, going into the 80s. Obviously you went to school here, right?
Yes. I went to Bergwin Elementary School, then from Bergwin, I went to Gladstone for a short stint, and then I went to St. Benedict de Moore Catholic School in the Hill District.
So you left us for
Yeah, I had to, for a little bit. For a little bit.
Yeah. Most people will say, I graduated from Gladstone.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like going to Bergwin back then?
Well, back then going to Bergwin, it was diverse, but it was like, I guess it was easier for the people that came previous or came before us. Mm-hmm. Like we were still dealing with a little bit of racial issues, but not in school. Like our teachers was some of the most fantastic teachers that I ever had in my life. I can remember, teachers like Miss Blango, Mr. Puzio, Mr. Weiss, and these are teachers that taught my parents and my parents' friends. So they already had a rapport with our parents. I don't know if that made the teaching better, but I always remember them.
It seems like when you have a relationship with somebody, it makes a difference.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what their ethnic background is. When you have a relationship and you know the person, it makes a lot difference in how you get along and everything.
Yes, because I can remember there's guys out here that, at certain times we might not have got along from different backgrounds, but as we got older and we seen the way that the world was changing and mm-hmm. different things come about, it was like, we better stay with the program, and that kind of brought us out of that racial divide.
Right. But growing up, you definitely experienced racial discrimination.
Most definitely.
Can you talk about the first experience that you remember?
Well, I'm actually they break the community up in 3 different parts, but it's all one community. I'm actually from the Glenwood section. So in the Glenwood section, we kind of like knew everybody. You know, everybody was familiar with each other. So it was like, you know, kind of a little bit more friendly, a little bit more tolerant. But I can remember like, you know, getting involved with Little League Baseball and going down below the tracks to the Old Grove for tryouts or whatever, and running into some of the older guys from down there that, you know, didn't always have the nicest words to say because, you know, that they wasn't enlightened on how the world was progressing. And, you know, I can remember a lot of guys saying, you know, that they experienced harsh times going down there. Yeah. But as the years went, everything got a little bit better, you know.
Yeah, we've had conversations with people from other communities that have said there's different parts of the community that was more so white, and then
Right.
there's other parts that was more so black. And you didn't cross over those lines. You knew
Right.
where the lines were to keep, it kind of kept us separate from each other.
In other words, you like, I guess above the tracks, you could do it any time of the day, but like, as it was getting dark, like in early 80s to mid 80s, you didn't really want to be down below the tracks.
Right.
Being a young black person or an older black person, after, you know, street lights came on, you don't want to be down there.
Now, did you feel like you got a good education as you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I didn't understand the importance of it. But as I look back, when I got into high school, the things that I knew compared to what they was teaching in high school and some of the things that the kids were just now learning, I realized that like we was kind of like in the upper echelon of education because it was like they was teaching things that we was supposed to be just now learning that I had learned in middle school. Mm-hmm. Like from a math teacher name, I can remember her name. I think her name was Miss Pavlovich. But I could remember her vividly.
Yeah.
I think I went to St. Benedict for maybe a year and a half. So when I came back, the things that I had learned at St. Benedict, they was just now teaching in middle school. But like I said, some of the things that, you know, we learned in middle school, people wasn't learning it until they got in high school. I was like, wow, what's going on? Like, but I kind of knew my mathematics was a little bit more advanced. Mm-hmm. I actually ended up taking like Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 when I was in the 9th grade. Okay. And I was in the class with like all 11th and 12th graders. And they keep asking me like, well, how did you end up in the class? I'm like, well, I already know this right here, you know.
Yeah. So let's get to the 80s because, you know, 1980s when I came to Hazelwood. And some of the things that I saw when I came here, there was still a few businesses that were still rolling here. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, there were a lot of people who were, you know, doing things to try to keep things nice in the community and everything. But we also had our challenges here. You know, my dad bought the church on Hazelwood Avenue, okay. And he was pastoring the church called Keystone. It used to be the first Hungarian church of Hazelwood. And when my dad bought it, that's when I came to Hazelwood. And shortly after I came, I noticed that there were a good bit of shootings that were going on in the community. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, it was a lot of shootings. And young people that I was meeting early in the game, you know, much later on, I was burying those same young boys. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I recall, and I want you to talk about this. One of the things that I recall is my wife and I were living upstairs in the church. I came down on one Saturday morning, came downstairs, I stepped out on Sylvan, and there was a cream-colored Jeep Cherokee outside about 100 yards up, going up Sylvan. And it was filled with guns, like Army artillery, mm-hmm. ammunition, and everything. And the windows were down, the doors weren't locked. It was just on our street. Papoose remembers it. You know, there's different ones that remember it the exact same way I remember it. And we mm-hmm. was standing out there just looking And, we called the police, we called the media. Media didn't show up. The police showed up and towed the vehicle away, and we never heard anything else after that. But what it made me think was, how does this kind of thing get into our community?
Well, in actuality, you enlightened me on something that I didn't know that happened out here, but I have heard that same type of situation happened in neighborhoods like Homewood and other neighborhoods. I said, man, is this a fabrication or did this really happen? But the people that I heard it from, people that I know, I was like, this must be real. You know what I mean? And, I ain't really got no explanation for it other than, somebody wanted them guns to be inside of the neighborhood.
I mean,
You know
how
what I mean?
easy was it?
Because I can remember being in the 80s, in the early 80s to mid 80s, we never ever, was like around guns, thought about, guns, different things like that. But then as the late 80s came, that type of thing became more prevalent and more common to hear gunshots or hear about, yeah, we heard this person got shot or that person got shot. So it was like, it was coming about slowly, but it was coming about a little bit faster than, normal.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, shooting in the communities is normal at all,
No, there's nothing
And then,
normal about it.
Through the early 90s, it was like it became way more prevalent than it ever was in the 80s,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. It was rough.
mhm.
It seemed like it was so much easier. I had started a youth program. I was working at a bank. I was an investment banker.
Mhm.
And I had started a youth program. This was like in the 80s, and I knew I was in competition with some of the other businesses that was going on in the community.
Mhm.
'Cause it's easier. I was telling kids, look, come on, let's get an education. Let me, get you involved in some constructive, programming and what have you. But I knew that there was some competition in the community with respect to, kids being able to go and do a little trip, get some money, drop off a bag, get some money, and things like that. And that was part of the competition. But I was thinking about how when I was living on Sylvan, how many times I saw people lined up to buy drugs in this community,
Mhm.
And there was one time in particular when we had a church service down on Monongahela, and there was a line of cars. We had almost blocked the street off because we had all the church members were circled up on Monongahela,
Mhm.
and there was SUVs that were lined up on Monongahela and going down Hazelwood Avenue that were waiting. And so it was kind of funny though because we knew we was holding up business.
Mhm.
This was at 11 o'clock Sunday morning, because I think in Hazelwood that was the time when you could do a lot of business because a lot of us was in church and nobody was really coming around.
And in actuality, I don't know, I guess I was going on down in that part of the neighborhood, but there were certain parts of the neighborhood that people that was into those type of things, like older people, they wouldn't even do nothing on Sundays.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I guess it was I don't know, open air drug markets. I guess they hit us hard, late 80s, early 90s. And it was due mostly because, you got a community of people that's eager to learn, eager to have jobs, because all of our parents and uncles and aunts and different things, they worked in the steel mills. But transitioning from the late 80s into the early 90s, a lot of them jobs was leaving us, for whatever reason, because I was too young at the time to really realize what was going on. But being as though the jobs was leaving us, and this was a way to make money, and there wasn't really too many programs at that particular time. There wasn't too many programs that was really reaching out to a certain demographic out here. So it was like, this is what they got involved with. You know, once you start making money, you don't look at the detriment that you cause to the neighborhood or the detriment that you cause to the people. It's just about, you know, I'm trying to feed myself or feed my family. So, you know.
So what kind of opportunities do you feel like that you had growing up?
When I look back
Or
at
didn't
it,
have?
no, when I look back at it, right, I had opportunities because of like my family, they tried hard, like, but when it came to like, I guess gaining like, trying to gain like a financial individuality, you know, I got dragged into that, you know what I mean? And I guess the money was the thing that was the lure, you know? Like, I'm like, okay, I could go down here, run around a little bit, half from my mom, half from my dad, half from my aunts, half from my uncle, or anybody else's parents that knew me. I guess meet a couple of people and I have a couple dollars in my pocket, and I guess it'll be my couple dollars. But like I said, like the backlash of it, like the detriment part of it, I never even thought about it because you got to realize nobody even taught us how to do that. You know what I mean? We was basically teaching ourselves how to do things like that, which is the wrong thing. But you know, I guess the wrong thing, this bringing about a finance. I guess that's better than doing nothing at all. Like, you know.
You know, I noticed that there were a lot of young African-American males that sold marijuana.
Yes.
And I'll talk about marijuana right now, back then. And the way I've looked at it is now you have marijuana stores and things that people
Yeah.
can go and buy marijuana. And some of these same young boys are doing time for selling marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I looked at it was they kept the industry alive until it became legal. And it's just like with respect to alcohol. When alcohol was illegal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, somebody kept that industry alive, you know, until it became legal.
Right.
And then, but the first people that could get businesses in that area, in that regard, are people who have access to wealth. And those were white people.
Right.
Those are white people. So you have white people getting the first marijuana plants, and you have black people who kept the business going, you know, kept it going. When, you know, one thing I noticed in Hazelwood, and I would watch it daily, is that almost all the customers that I saw that came through Hazelwood were white.
Right.
And I looked at that, and I recall one time one of the investigators coming to talk to me, and I said, look, you all are trying to get the drug dealer, but why don't you take away the customers? The customers are traveling here from as far as, you know, as far as Chicago. They was coming here from as far as Chicago, Detroit, to buy drug in Hazelwood.
Mm-hmm.
That
I
blew-
actually seen Hazelwood on 60 Minutes before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there with my grandmother, and they're talking about 2nd Avenue and Vespuccia Street, and this is right across from where we lived at. And I'm like, Gram, so what are they talking about? She was like, they're talking about something, I want to just listen to them. And I'm listening, I'm like, wow. And they was talking like about a major heroin pipeline. Like, I was like, this is on 60 Minutes, and I was like, oh, I don't know nothing about none of this. Like, I don't see none of this that they talking about. But after they had that documentary, and I paid a little bit more attention, I said, okay, this really must be going on, like, because now I can see a little bit more clearer, like, you know. But like you said, the majority of the consumer was basically like, you know, Caucasian people that came from different neighborhoods to this neighborhood, you know, to basically handle their business or do whatever it was that they was trying to do.
Yeah.
You know.
I think about this also in terms of the amount of African American men that are in prison back then, and the amount of African American men that are in prison today for selling a product that they could not get on their own. It had to be brought to them.
Right.
You know, so when crack first came, I know you remember it, you got to remember it as good as I do.
Yeah.
I remember when crack first came into Hazelwood.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it was brought into Hazelwood. It wasn't wasn't something that we were able to just get.
Right.
It was, you know, you had the powder, you had the crack, you know, and later, you know, you had crank, you had it was so many other things that popped up.
See, the thing that I like, I wasn't familiar with sentencing disparity until late 90s, going into the 2000s. But like the thing that I could never understand about sentencing disparity is, okay, you're sentencing these guys that come from a minority background to, I think it was 100 to 1 at the time. So they're saying, okay, this 1 gram of crack is equal to 100 grams of powder. And, you know, not to let the cat out the bag, but 100 grams of powder, you can make 200 grams of crack,
Right.
from what I understood.
Right.
So I never understood the sentencing disparity in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, you don't really see too many, you know, white guys selling crack at the time. Like they was more into powder cocaine and different things like that. But like the black guys that sell the crack, however they get it, because like you said, it came out of nowhere. But like if somebody got caught with crack versus somebody getting caught with powder, it was like, okay, we'll give you a slap on the wrist versus we'll take you out of your family's life for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I know dudes that got so much time for selling crack cocaine. Like I might have came across him and asked him like, well, did you kill somebody, or did you shoot somebody? Did you hurt somebody? And then asking somebody that maybe did get in a situation where, you know, somebody lost their life or someone got hurt or something like that. There were situations where people that actually harmed people got way less time than somebody that was out there trying to make a living and, you know, just chose the wrong way to make their living. So I was like, why not teach them, you know, how to make a living in the proper manner rather than, you know, give them like, you know, a crazy sentence like that, because you basically ain't doing nothing but removing them from the society for a number of years. When they come back to the society, irregardless of whatever they learned, wherever they was at, they're still gonna be slow in society. You know what I mean? So it's gonna take them, you know, a few years to multiple years to actually be a productive member of that society that they came from. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So when you think about those 80s and that early 90s times, and you look at today, like, do you see a contrast? Do you see a difference, or do you think it got worse, or you think it got better?
I want to say that it got worse, and the reason why I say that is because, like in the early to mid '90s, Hazelwood was working towards getting away from the drug game. Period. So like the things that we was teaching in like the mid '90s to late '90s with the Youth Places program and the Youth Preach program, we started actually reaching a lot of our youth out here, and today these are some of our most productive members of the Hazelwood community, because they didn't go left, because they went right, because they had someone to teach them to stay on the right path and receive the, you know, rewards of life like that.
Well, you know, that's a big part of what these dialogues are about. Looking at yesterday, looking what it was like growing up, you know, in Hazelwood, being a diverse community, you know, I grew up in pretty much all black community because I was in Homewood. I was on the Hill and I was in Homewood. But in Hazelwood, there was that diversity. It was white and black.
Yeah, Hazelwood was always, I guess, like I want to say it's like a 60-40 divide in racial disparity. But like, you know, we really didn't deal with racial tension like that as much in the 90s as we did in the 80s, because everybody was like, getting smarter, and the world was becoming more tolerant about, interracial relationships and different things like that. So people was like moving on, and the people that was staying in that state, it was like they started to realize, well, damn, I'm slow. You know what I mean? They're moving on. They're doing different things. They're becoming diversified, and here I am stuck in this box right here because of how I feel about the next person's race. So they started being a little bit more easier, like, through the 90s, and it's like now. I could barely see it now. Like, you know what I mean? From what I seen growing up, late 70s, 80s, 90s, it's like it ain't really a different community, but it's the total opposite of what it was, like, far as racial disparity. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, like, I started to see, like, some of the white people I grew up with, played Little League with, and, did a lot of things out here with, like dealing with things like drug addiction and different things like that. Like, I went to prison, and when I went to prison, like, I tried to learn as much as I can, read as much as I could. That was like my only time in prison. So I was like, okay, all the things that I heard about prison, some of it may be true, but in actuality, you don't really have time to, like read all the time or try to put into yourself all the time. So that I use my time to try to make myself a better person. You know what I mean? And in doing that, like, it actually worked out well as far as my, my thinking, my thought process.
Right. So when you think about the opportunities that you had growing up and now the opportunities that you have now, how do you see them as different? Do you see you're having different opportunities now, better opportunities, or
I feel
worse?
like when I was growing up, we didn't really have a lot of financial opportunity or financial growth, and I think, like, everybody thinks about that at some point in their life. Versus now, like, I view the community and the world different. Like, I feel like you can create your own opportunity now, versus back then, like, the opportunities were created for you, and you just follow whatever was created for you.
That's great. So if you had an opportunity to sit down and talk with the President of the United States,
Our current president.
our current president, what would you advise him? If you had an opportunity to advise him, how would you advise him?
I think my best advice would be to speak with, our president, Mr. Trump, and try to make him understand that if you want a lot of these things that you consider negative in the communities to stop, then you have to put, like, programs in the community to teach people how to provide for themselves, like trade school. Like, I truly feel like the people from this community, if they had a better opportunity at trade school, instead of, I went to high school, okay, what college am I trying to do? A lot of people's not trying to go to college. Like, you know what I mean? Like, from what I know of Hazelwood and, the Pittsburgh area and the neighborhoods that I visited, people's trying to get a job so they can provide for themselves or for their family. But a lot of people don't have the skills to get the jobs. So I feel like if they was provided with an opportunity to go to a trade school and, acquire some skills, then it will put them in a better mind frame, and they will be able to get a better job. So, like, the negative things that affect a lot of people from the community, they'll blow right past that. They'll never even think about it because they'll be preoccupied with doing positive things and moving in a positive direction to get their finances together.
Now, let me ask you this last sort of line of questions. As you were growing up, and even now, you were saying you had both black and white friends.
Yes.
Could you actually find out where your Do you know where your white friends are right now and what they're doing?
Some of them is doing a little bit better. Some of them may be doing a little bit worse. But I think the ones that's doing worse, I think that's from their own, you know, doing or a path that they chose versus the path that was laid out for them. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I got a couple of friends that it's in law enforcement, you know, construction workers, you know, all different types of professions. And I can't really say that the white friends that I have is in better positions than the black friends that I have, because like I said, like as the years went on, I could remember asking my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 28 years old, and I asked her one time, she was going to Liberty Elementary. I said, so how do you feel about race and interacting with, you know, white people, Chinese people, or people from other backgrounds, right? And she's talking to me. She said, you know, I got white friends, I got you know, Spanish friends, Oriental friends. I'm like, okay, that ain't what I'm asking you. I'm like, how do you feel about those people that you're saying is your friends? And as we was talking, right, she basically told me, like, the stuff that y'all went through back in the day, Dad, like, we don't go through that no more. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow, I said, this is deep right here, because, like, this is so much that have changed, and I really wasn't focused on that part of, you know, changing our lives. But after that, like, you know, I really started to focus on it. Then, like, younger kids, you know, me speaking to them, if you catch them out on line, you try to, you know, put them back on the straight and narrow. But I was like, okay, this racial divide out here in Hazelwood is actually disappearing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess we became more of a solidified community when we were able to drop that. You know what I mean? Little racial tension off.
Yeah.
Because me being from the community, like I said, it was rough, and like certain parts of the '80s, it was rough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can remember like grown men saying racial slurs to the little kids, and you're not gonna be hurtful to a little kid, but as you get older, and you realize, like, you know, say, okay, them was the times that we was in, and you know, I seen the progress, and I can let that go, so we can move forward. We don't want to, you know, we don't want to be the last in line. You know,
That's a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to hear your daughter say something like that.
blew my mind. Changed my outlook.
That's pure. She's got a pure mind.
It changed my outlook. But like, I don't know, like when I was growing up and even now, I guess school kind of helped break that down too for me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, school did a good job of helping break that down, because like anybody that I can say, like, if I see any of my guys that I went to elementary school with, white or black, like, it's like all love, and like people will see us and be like, well, is y'all cool like that? I'm like, yeah, we're cool like that, because we knew each other for so long, and we went through this together. Whether they was going through it here and I was going through it there, we know what we went through. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming and sharing your story, sharing a part of your life. You know, just a little bit, but what you had to say is significant, and it's going to be added to the dialogue that we're having, and it continues. And hopefully all of us will continue to have this dialogue so that we can get to know each other better,
Right.
and experience what it means to be one world, one people.
So one thing about me, I'm for the betterment of the Hazelwood community first and foremost. So I was kind of reluctant to do this at first. You know, we don't really speak to the media, you know what I mean, out here, or, you know, we don't have the best relationship with the authorities for whatever reason. But like, I feel that it's important to get the Hazelwood story, you know, out there, so people can learn about us, so we, you know, could, you know, get further ahead in the game. I feel like, you know, in certain areas, like I said, like, you know, as far as the people from the neighborhood, the young men and women from the neighborhood, you know, I feel like they need to have a little bit better opportunities to, you know, acquire some of these trades and different things, you know, so you know, so they can realize some of their different things that they want to do in life, some of their dreams in life, you know.
Yeah.
and anything to push this community further in a positive direction, you know, I'm all for it.
Well, the good thing about this is we're not the media. We're Hazelwood. We get to tell our own story this time.
I felt comfortable
Yeah.
with it. I didn't feel like y'all was the media, you know.
Yeah, we get to tell our own story this time. So
Okay.
I guess that's it, guys. Good stuff, man.
All
Good
right.
stuff.
Yep,
This was
yep,
good.
yep.
Good.